Hello, my name is Zaureš and I'm an English teacher at NIS School of Chemistry and Biology Directions in Kızıldağ City. Today, I will be talking about the application and the importance of peer assessment in English classes, to be specific in speaking English. So, let's start with what the aims that I have identified for this seminar. They are the following: to identify what peer assessment is and how it works in class, to go through the strategies possible to use to support peer assessment in speaking English, to explore how to develop an effective matrix to provide the evidence of effective peer assessment in English classes. So let's start with consideration of what the peer assessment is. I have chosen these kind of educators. Falchikov, for example, defines peer assessment as the process through which groups of individuals rate their peers, typically conducted through an evaluation form. And Samuel also have identified peer assessment, that this is a broad topic and can be qualitative in nature, formative or summative, and administered with the inclusion of self-assessment. What are the key components of peer assessment? So it is engaging students in the process of identifying criteria by which their work and that of the peers will be judged. Engaging students in the process of making judgments about the extent to which their work and the work of other students has and has not met the identified criteria. And let's see the benefits of peer assessment for the students. So the first benefit is that all students are encouraged to participate in elaborated and systematic processes that support learning. Students feel ownership of the assessment and learning process, rather than being alienated or victimized by it. In many cases, students feel that their own engagement in peer and self-assessment helps to prevent unfair judgments of their work, since they are in a uniquely informed position. Students' motivation and engagement in learning is commensurately higher. Students' understanding of the meaning of the criteria and standards, in another word, is richer, particularly when groups of students participate in the identification of criteria as learning objectives. What are the benefits of peer assessment? This is keeping up. Students gain a better understanding of criteria and standards which are difficult to articulate. Collective participation helps to establish and support a scholarly community of learners who collaborate and cooperate in supporting each other's learning. Students will improve formative assessment. That is, students will be able even to assess their own formative tasks without having any problems with explaining the reasons of their marks. How does peer assessment work? It can be a learning opportunity where students evaluate themselves against the performance of their peers. Students take on the role of subject matter expert, so they become the experts of assessing themselves, assessing their peers, taking a responsibility, high level of responsibility. Students' evaluations can provide teachers with additional information that they have not been able to observe during the class and supports judgments about individual efforts in completing the task. Peer assessment can be also formative and summative, as we have already mentioned. It can also include self-assessment, even when the task has been developed collaboratively in groups. Self-assessment has a special role in it. So here are some suggested strategies for peer assessing for speaking. So after I made research on gathering some information about the strategies that can be used to peer assess in peer assessment, the speaking, I found this kind of strategy. The first one is green, yellow, red cones, or in another word, cards. So what you have to do is you have to give each student a set of cones, cards, and the green cards will stand for got it, I understand it. Yellow, I understand part of it, so I'm confused. Red, I'm lost. So stop during a lesson or unit to check for understanding. Form pairs of a green and yellow for peer tutoring and practice. So in groups of colors, of the same colors, they peer assess each other. Group them and then reteach reds, for example. So the next strategy is circle check. Students stand and form a circle. Each person makes a summary statement or comment about the topic being studied. In a more complicated version, each successive comment must be connected to the one before it. So it can be the task when the students have read the text or the book is being discussed as a home reading task, or the students have made the presentation, they've presented their project. So after this, student makes their personal summaries and to give their comments, sharing with each other in a circle. Luck of the draw. This is a series of questions or concepts written on index cards. Students draw a card and respond to the question or explain the concept. So as you have understood, The teachers should provide the questions or the names of different concepts. It's up to the topics that we have. So the concept is a big idea that we find from the lesson. For example, if the topic of the lesson is creativity, so or creative people, the concept of the lesson, of several lessons, is creativity. So the students can respond to the questions about creativity or just explain the concept. So usually this strategy is used when we, at the end of the term, or when you have finished studying one topic. So alternatively, each student can write a summary card. Then the teacher draws a name and the lucky student reads his summary. So it can be prepared either by the teacher or by the student. The next one, I called this, so we've created it, the idea came during the lesson, and then when we co-planned, I also suggested it to my colleagues, co-teachers, and we decided to call it the best title. So students think about a story. So the topic can be chosen according to the unit that we are considering. So they think up of a name, they put it on the board, the students go to the board, they read the names of different stories of their peers and start giving the points. So the sticker with the most number of the points will have, so the student whose sticker got most of the number of stickers will be able to, so he's lucky one, to share his story to the class. Okay, so here are the examples. So we can see some stickers got only by 1 point, and then here we have 3 points and 5 points. The highest point was given 5. And actually it was very interesting to increase the motivation of the students, and it was really personal stories, especially on the topic of scary stories. So we know that students usually don't like sharing their personal things, and it was really fun to have this kind of activity. And then we tried also debate. So these kind of activities usually are not so the idea of using debate is usually it's not new. So my colleagues and I, who share common classes, decided to have debates at the same time. So how did we arrange it? Usually we have 12 students in different subgroups in English classes. So I sent the half of my students, that is 6 students, from my group over to another teacher's class. And my colleague sent her 6 students to my class for the debate. So the task was the following. Students are divided into teams, and each team prepares a debate about, for example, ecological issues in Kazakhstan. Teacher tells students which side of the argument they take, Each team should decide who the team captain is. Students ensure that everyone is working on their argument and using their time well to prepare. The team captain also introduces their team in the debate. Each team member must discuss only 1 or 2 points that help to support their argument. Students in the same team must not repeat the points made by their team members or a team loses points. So otherwise they lose the points. Teacher tells learners how long each team have to present their debate. The difference between a debate and a presentation is that team members cannot repeat points made by other team members. Points should consider what the opposing team, for example, is the team on the other side of the argument, is going to say and use good points to counter their argument, disagree with them. Alright? So, what were the criteria? One student from each team will be the judges, so they will be 2 students, and they will give points to teams for good presentation as a team, 5 points, working well as an organized team when presenting the argument to the class, 5 points again. Each speaker will be given points for speaking clearly and providing 1-2 points that strongly support their argument. Points are not repeated, so we give for this criteria 3 points. Teams will be given points for listening well and paying attention when the other team is speaking, so 5 points. So it was actually really fun to see the feedback of this activity. The learners were able to see, to compare themselves with the other group that is being taught by another teacher, and they could see their weak points, strong points, and they were quite well on giving their marks, and it was fair that they had 1 student from each group to judge them. So it went, and every student in each team had the responsibility to make a research, to present it clearly. They did their best to not repeat it and to make it specific, different, interesting. And there was a request, suggestion from the students at the end of the lesson to conduct this kind of debates, not in the class with 1 group students, but to exchange the experience with opponent group, with another subgroup. So I really suggest this activity. Here I'm going to talk about the matrix that makes explicit a range of assessment criteria and expected performance standards. Assessors evaluate a student's performance against all of these rather than assigning a single subjective score. You can use a matrix to structure discussions with students about different levels of performance on an assessment task. Students can use the matrix during peer assessment and self-assessment also to generate and justify assessments. It should start with the objective from the curriculum. For example, I have chosen the objective for the speaking in the 10th grade. I personally work most of all with the 10th grade, and I'm really interested in co-planning and developing the strategies to help our 10th graders to have the best marks on the summative, external summatives. So the objective is to use appropriate subject-specific vocabulary and syntax to talk about a range of general and curricular topics. The presentation of objective itself does not make any sense for a student, as you know, so teachers first of all should unpack the objectives from teacher speak to student speak in terms of the knowledge, information, ideas, content, and skills like grammar, writing, listening, speaking, so the learning outcomes that are the focus of the task. While considering how to unpack the objectives, the teacher should think about two questions. The first one, what vocabulary are the students required to use, and what is the language focus that should be assessed? Okay, so when we unpack the objectives, we should make it simple. We should change it into from jargonic language, we say, that the teachers only understand, into the language of education for the students. So to develop the matrix, so after you ensure that the language is clear for the students, by the students acknowledge that this takes time. Of course, it takes time and practice, both by the teacher and by the students. So we've rewritten the objectives into student speak. The next step is to create a continuum of the quality and the quantity with the words ineffective, effective, highly effective. That these words highlight the continuum itself. So, or we can use the words none, some, all, most. So for the ineffective, you can give 1 point, saying like no key vocabulary is used during the speech. The idea or ideas do not come from the original text if the students need to speak on the text that they have considered after the listening or after the reading task. Number 3, the middle point is effective. So here the students have used some key vocabulary or key ideas from the original text. And number 5 is highly effective. So number 5 is what the students aim to from the learning objectives. So you directly show them what the outcomes from the task is. So it should be highly effective only if all key vocabulary and or all ideas have been mentioned consider it. So when you use matrix, it's very important to include exemplars of quantitative and qualitative evidence, because it's first of all, students are not experts and they are not educated on assessing. So in order to help them to peer assess, we should help them showing the specific exemplars. For example, for the to get point number 1, they consider this kind of exemplar. Only creative people are imaginative. So this says some credit for keywords, creative and imaginative, but not accurately represented from the text. Or point 3 is given, the example for the point 3 is given: geniuses like Picasso, Mozart and Shakespeare are better than sports people from the last century. So according to the matrix, it says more credit for keywords, information, but incorrect in terms of the context again. And point 5, research shows that with training like Mozart, everyone has creative abilities, and that in creativity, quantity equals quality. So, and this stands, if we go back, all key vocabulary is used and all ideas are correct according in terms of the context. So how do you introduce the matrix to your class? Discuss the matrix with the students before the task begins, so that they are clear about the expectations and outcomes of the task. There are some possible stages of self and peer assessment working with the matrix. So students can be self-assessed, they can self-assess themselves, and then it can turn into, even it's a group work, they can self-assess themselves, and then group can be assessed by peer assessment, and then whole class can be assessed by again by peer assessment. So here is an example of the matrix that I have used for the first time. It was really difficult for me to identify the continuum. The drawback of this matrix is that I haven't provided with the examples, but then I discussed it with my colleagues how to the ways of improving the matrix. So, and we have come to the idea that it's better to add exemplars. So for the first criteria is the quality of information and ideas. Number 1, number 3 and number 5 has been already mentioned in the previous slides. So number 2, we can say minimal key vocabulary or idea from the original text is mentioned. And for number 4, most key vocabulary ideas from the original text. So it goes with the words no, minimal, some, most, and all. It's very important to include also the accuracy of the grammar and tense, article, whatever you aim your students to achieve. So we can start from there are many grammatical errors in the text that significantly affect understanding of the speaker. Understanding of the listeners. There are many grammatical errors in the text, but they do not always affect understanding. and we go, there are some grammatical errors in the text that affect understanding. And point number 4, while there are some grammatical errors in the text, understanding is not generally affected. And the last continuum is there are few grammatical errors in the text that affect understanding. You can also include logical organization of the information within the text. So it was a little bit more easier for me because I have just added no, minimal, some, more, and all information is provided. This was my first experience. Of course, I used previously the criteria-based assessment on peer assessment, but this was like thoroughly done by me. And we've also considered the most beautiful thing. We've talked on the video, a short film that we've watched, and we were aiming to help students to be able to describe the characters, but not to go to explaining the plot of the story. So, and I have chosen only 2 objectives to use the ability of students to use a variety of compound adjectives to describe characters. So what we are aiming to from this is the ability of students accurately use a variety of compound adjectives to write and to speak about the characters, to describe the characters. So you can change your matrix from write and speak according to what skill you are assessing. And here you can see the feedback that the students can give, make notes at the moment when they start sharing their marks. So you can see I have added the examples, and the examples should be very specific and close to the topics that we are doing. The second objective was describe characters using a minimum of 2 complex sentences. So we are aiming now to write a description or to describe characters using a minimum of 2 complex sentences. And the examples are, for example, psychologists warn us that computer games can cause aggression even though they help with problem-solving skills. If we don't make good decisions about how we spend our leisure time, this could become a major social issue. Here I have given them, it's better to give the exemplars close to the topic, but I gave them the exemplars from the topics that we've considered previously at the beginning of the term. And the final, the outcome of the task is that students describe in 2 complex sentences using accurately the variety of compound adjectives. And I have come with the problem where students working together in groups or in pairs, they faced the problem that they didn't want to work with each other. Maybe they misunderstand each other, maybe they have poor relationship with each other. So sometimes we had really bad situations when the students just was standing saying, I don't want to work with this student, I can't. And the work really didn't go on. And of course it has a very big impact on the outcome, on the result of the work. So what I have come later to solve this problem is to add at the end of the lesson or the session to give them group task where they self-assess themselves or peer evaluate. So, and I have added this kind of criteria. Time is very important, so the students must have to be able to use time valuably, helping to completing the task, demonstrate a cooperative and supportive attitude to other group members, contribute significantly to the success and quality of the task. Sometimes we have, if it's the group of different students of different abilities, sometimes the higher level students make more contribution than the lower level students, so it's required to contribute significantly for the success and quality. And of course, the important thing is to make good effort to speak in English when working in groups or in peers. So it's up to you. You can just make little changes when you implement these matrices. So here I have added a table with the self-evaluation, so the student has to consider his own work first and then assess the group members. So when do we use matrix? Quantitative and qualitative matrices are used as a feedback or a formative assessment after an activity is completed by the students. It can be also used when the students, so the students can see some drawbacks, and next time they can improve their work. Peer assessment for the group work matrix is used usually at the end of the lesson. So I call the previous matrix, I call interrelationship, the matrix of interrelationship of students. So it can be used at the end of the lesson when all contribution is done by the students and all work has been completed. So self-assessment can be also qualitative and quantitative, where the students consider these kind of questions. They ask themselves, what was the value of my work in relation to the completed task? How well did I contribute or participate? So, how does it look like in real classwork? I have really tried it for several times, and now I'm very happy that I have an opportunity to share it with you. So here in the first picture, students looking through the criteria, so they are reading the criteria, matrix, the criteria in the matrix where it shows the students start from the learning objective into what they are aiming to. And it's very important that the teachers support students with the clear instructions at the beginning of the implementation of peer assessment. So after the practice, so it needs a lot of practice for the students to be able to use it on themselves, so that they automatically could identify this is after listening, so it goes for this continuum, they have got 3 point or 2 point. After the listening, watching or reading the answers of their peers, students start marking them going through the criteria together in the group. So then they share their marks with the peers, explaining and providing the evidence. So the evidences here should be very specific. They can show compound adjectives that they have used. They can consider also the complex sentence, saying was it complex sentence or it was not complex sentence but compound sentence, or the students use just simple sentences. I have found, I have gathered some evidences for myself to see the effectiveness of peer assessment using matrix in the peer assessment. So the first time when I used the matrix, it was a dictogloss activity, and the students gave, you can see the total points were 13, and this is one of the highest point. It means they got 4 out of all criteria, or 5. So 15 is the highest point, 13 is not bad, it's a very good point. But from my point of view as a teacher, I could see that it was not a fair mark to be given for the groups. So then after several times of using the matrix in my classes, here I saw the evidence. So the evidence of the matrix that benefits for the students' learning, you can see that, for example, CA stands for the compound adjective, and S stands for the ability of the students to use complex sentences and the quality of the sentence. So here in the first picture you can see group number 1 is assessed by group number 2 and 3. So they have given, we can see number 1 that is much different from what the group number 2 has given. I think it's because I was very specific in supporting students with the sample sentences by looking at the sample sentences. It was much easier for the students to be able to assess their peers. And here in group number 2, of course, it's the total number is better than the group number 1, but it still has 2 points. So here's a big difference what we had at the beginning, the first time I used the matrix, and the last time I used the matrix. So I can see the big difference, and I can see that the students are really in the process of assessing. They are motivated, they understand the responsibilities they are taking, and they want to be really fair to each other. So here's the extract from the video where students giving the feedback on the peer assessment.
For compounding, just 3 months.
Yes.
My apologies. Okay. This group, what did you give adjectives?
We give 3 points for compound adjective, and
Why?
because
Because
they use compound adjectives to write descriptions of characters.
Okay. Give me an example of a compound adjective that they used. Kind-hearted. Well done.
Kind boy isn't.
You don't agree with kind boy. Well done. That's good. Yeah? Kind boy is not a compound adjective. It does not use a hyphen. Well done. Good. All right. So what did you give them for sentence structure?
For sentence structure, we give 3 points.
You gave 3?
Yes.
Can you tell us why?
Because two sentences are relation.
Closer.
Close.
You must describe the character.
In first sentence, kind boy, and in second sentence, kind girl.
They're very similar, is what you're saying. They're similar. Was that in the criteria, though? What did the criteria ask? You said for 3. What does it say for sentence structure?
Write descriptions of characters using 1 compound and 1 complex sentence.
Okay. So which one of these is a complex sentence?
Two.
So if there's no complex sentence here, what mark would you give them if there's no complex? For a 3, it's compound sentence, isn't it? What does it say here?
3. Write descriptions of characters using one compound and one complex sentence.
Okay. Is either of these sentences complex?
0.
You just say it, tell us.
Асия.
So there was the discussion of the students sharing the marks they have given, providing the evidence for the rest of the class, the reasons of their decision, and they were really supportive. And in the process, the student that is speaking is one of my lower level students who would never speak or show the desire to speak or interest. After we started using the matrix, I think there was a very big improvement and success, of course, that made them to go forward. So the last thing that I want to show is that there are some philosophical issues that we teachers should consider. The first one, do teachers want to value, we have to decide if we want to value participation and contribution, or just the quality or quantity of the task output. And the second question is, we know that our curriculum really values participation and cooperation of the students. So why are teachers these days not assessing 21st century learner skills? The last philosophical issue that I want to raise is, should the group only peer assess how valuable the individual student's contribution was in relation to the completed task? So here are the resources that I have worked on, and thanks for my colleagues who really were helpful and supportive for me to create this online seminar. And it's my pleasure if you have if it was informative for you and you found something that you can use in the future in the classes. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.